What if everything you were taught about pain was wrong? Not slightly wrong. Fundamentally, completely, dangerously wrong. We live in a culture obsessed with comfort, with optimization, with removing every obstacle, every discomfort, every moment of difficulty as fast as possible. And yet, the most fulfilled people in history weren't the ones who avoided suffering. They were the ones who understood it. Today we're going to talk about something nobody wants to hear, but everybody needs to. Here's what modern culture tells you about pain. It tells you that suffering is a problem to be solved, a bug in the system, an error that shouldn't exist. And if you're suffering, you're failing somehow. You haven't optimized enough, haven't meditated enough, haven't taken the right supplements or followed the right morning routine. This idea is everywhere. Self-help books promise to eliminate your anxiety in 30 days. Algorithms are designed to keep you entertained so you never have to sit with a difficult thought. Pharmaceutical companies have built trillion-dollar industries on the premise that discomfort should be chemically removed. And the result? We are the most medicated, most distracted, most comfortable generation in human history. And we are also, statistically, the most anxious, most depressed, most purposeless. Something is deeply wrong with how we understand suffering. Let's go back, way back. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, didn't try to eliminate suffering. They tried to understand it. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and had his leg broken by his master just to prove dominance, wrote some of the most serene philosophy in history. Not because his life was easy, because he understood something profound. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by their opinions about things." Think about what that means. The suffering isn't in the event. It's in the story you tell yourself about the event. Your business fails. That's a fact. The suffering comes from the story. This means I'm a failure. This means my life is over. This means I'm not worthy of success. The Stoics weren't telling you to feel nothing. They were telling you to examine the story, because the story is almost always a lie. But even the Stoics had their limits. They focused on what to do with suffering. They didn't fully answer the question of why suffering exists at all. For that, we need Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist. In 1942, he was arrested by the Nazis and sent to Auschwitz. His parents were killed. His wife was killed. His brother was killed. He lost everything that a human being can lose. And in the middle of that, he made an observation that would become one of the most important ideas of the 20th century. He noticed that some prisoners, those who had a reason to survive, a purpose, something they were living for, survived longer. Not just psychologically, physically. They got sick less. They recovered faster. They maintained a will to live when others gave up. And those who had nothing to live for, those who had lost not just their possessions and their family but their sense of meaning, collapsed. Frankl concluded that suffering itself is not the problem. Meaningless suffering is the problem. He wrote, "If there is a purpose in life at all, there must be a purpose in suffering and dying. This is not a comfortable idea. It's not supposed to be. Here's the question I want you to sit with. What if your suffering right now, whatever you're going through, is not an obstacle to your life? What if it is your life? What if the difficulty you're avoiding is the exact thing that would transform you?" Nietzsche said, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger." But that's been turned into a gym poster and lost its meaning. What Nietzsche actually meant was deeper. He was saying that the self you become after surviving something hard is fundamentally different from the self before. Not just stronger, different, with a different relationship to fear, to loss, to death itself. The Japanese have a concept called wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection, transience, and incompleteness. There's a practice called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The crack isn't hidden, it's highlighted. It becomes the most beautiful part of the object. Your breaks are not your weaknesses. They're your history. They're evidence that you lived. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. If suffering can have meaning, does that mean we should seek it? Does that mean we should embrace pain for its own sake? No. And this is the distinction philosophy draws very carefully. There are two kinds of suffering. The first is imposed suffering, loss, illness, injustice, grief. Suffering that comes to you regardless of your choices. The Stoics and Frankl both say, this suffering has the potential for profound meaning if you engage with it consciously rather than running from it. The second is chosen suffering, the suffering of growth, discipline, and resistance. The discomfort of saying the difficult truth. The pain of changing a habit. The vulnerability of loving someone. This kind of suffering is an investment. Produces something. The suffering we should avoid is neither of these. It's the suffering of unconsciousness, the dull ache of a life unlived. The suffering of someone who never took the risk, never spoke the truth, never became who they were capable of becoming. That suffering has no return. It's the most tragic kind. I want to be specific, because philosophy without application is just beautiful noise. If you are going through something difficult right now, and you are, or you wouldn't be watching a video about suffering at 11 p.m., here's what philosophy actually offers you. Not comfort. Not the promise that it will end soon. Not the guarantee that everything happens for a reason. It offers you agency. The Stoics give you the tool of distinction, separating what is in your control from what isn't, and directing your energy accordingly. Frankl gives you the tool of reframing, asking not why is this happening to me, but what is this asking of me? Nietzsche gives you the tool of acceptance, not passive acceptance, but the fierce, defiant decision to love your fate. Amor fati, love of fate. And the Buddhist tradition gives you perhaps the most radical tool of all, the recognition that suffering itself is a teacher, that impermanence is not a flaw in reality but its most fundamental feature, and that the resistance to impermanence is the source of most human pain. I won't pretend that any of this makes suffering easy. It doesn't. Marcus Aurelius lost 8 of his 13 children. He wrote about grief with devastating honesty. Frankl spent years reconstructing himself after Auschwitz. Nietzsche suffered debilitating physical and mental illness for most of his adult life. These weren't men who transcended suffering. They were men who refused to be destroyed by it. And in that refusal, they created something that outlasted their pain by centuries. The question isn't whether you will suffer. You will. Everyone does. That's not pessimism, that's the human condition. The question is what you will build from it. Because at the end of your life, you won't be judged, not by God, not by history, not by yourself, on how much comfort you accumulated. You'll be judged on what you became in response to what happened to you. And that, only that, is entirely in your hands. Tell me in the comments. What's the hardest thing you've ever gone through, and what did it teach you? I read every comment. And if this made you think, share it with someone who needs it.